Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Eyes on Geopolitics. I'm joined today with Andy Milburn, Mick Mulroy, myself, Dimitri Kontakos. A lot happening. I'm going to be honest, obviously a lot's happening in the world always. It's not, this week has kind of been a little bit quiet, more quiet. We had a show last week talking about what seemed to be the U.S. military spinning up to hit Venezuela. Nothing has happened since. I think we have hit a couple of narco boats in the interim, so that's not nothing, but some people would argue it's breaking international law, but so it's not nothing for sure. What we're going to hit on today to start with is Viktor Orban's meeting with Donald Trump in the White House this past week. A couple key points from there. I mean, obviously it's a hot button issue because Hungary is obviously has become an authoritarian country. The big note from there was the energy stuff, because Hungary does get about 86% of its oil from Russia, and the U.S. has been kind of putting the screws to Europe to stop their their dependence on Russian oil, and Hungary got a 1-year moratorium on that, which I'm sure will cause some issues with the rest of the EU and NATO countries in terms of like they're busting our balls to get rid of Russian oil, but but Hungary gets the 1-year, freeze on it essentially. Hungary also committed to buying U.S. liquefied natural gas under a contract value around $600 million. And Trump praised Orban's stance on immigration, called Hungary well-led, and signaled strong personal rapport. That's all the notes I have. So, Mick, you tell me what's going on with this.
Well, first of all, I have to say happy almost Marine Corps birthday to brother Andy over there, because there's going to be Marines around the world starting to lose it. I think today probably. So if you don't like that stuff, you probably shouldn't watch social media because it's about to be there's a storm a coming, and they're hilarious. But in all seriousness, that's the birthday of our beloved Corps is tomorrow, and then Veterans Day is the day after, which I hope everybody takes the time to remember all those that gave this ultimate sacrifice. Um, Orban. So it is inconsistent with the strategy, the policy of trying to cut off Russia's ability to fund its war, and the comments, as you rightfully said, of the U.S. pushing Europe, many countries in Europe, which there are several that still um, use Russian oil and gas, to cut it, right? And then have Orban come over, who is sympathetic to Russia, who is, as you said, sliding further and further into autocracy, less into the belief in civil rights for its own people, and then give them a pass. Uh, they should be included in all the other countries that need to figure out new ways, and the U.S. could help them. There's all sorts of discussions on, coming out of Croatia, this new pipeline. I know it's going to take a while, but coming out of Qatar, that's going to go through Syria and go into Europe. We need to be doing everything we can to get off of any dependence at all on Russian oil and gas. They are, as Senator McCain, the late Senator McCain said, a army with a gas station. So we need to make that uh, we need to make our allies in Europe do the right thing and get off any dependence on them. So Orban came out of that saying he got an indefinite waiver. I don't know if you saw that part. Uh, the media is reporting what the White House said, which I assume is accurate, that it's a 1-year waiver. But that 1 year can, it's going to be substantial to the war in Ukraine. So I think it's too late now, I suppose, but we need not to be giving waivers to friends, because other countries in Europe are now going to say, you just gave that guy a waiver. So now we need a waiver. And it's going to be a domino effect. So I think it was a mistake to do. Unfortunately, it looked like it was just a personal friendship that led the way there. It's not only not helping Ukraine, but it's not helping what you stated U.S. policy is on uh, supporting Ukraine and kind of cut off Russian oil to fund the war.
Andy?
Yeah, of all people to give a waiver to,
Yeah.
Orban is probably the the last choice that I would make. I mean, I will say, yeah, Hungary allegedly its economy suffered probably more than most other European countries from the sanctions because I think, as you mentioned, sorry, it wasn't that I forgot your name. It's just encroaching old age. As you mentioned, the Hungary is landlocked and reliant on oil, pipelined oil. But nevertheless, there's the timing of this particular announcement. First of all, I mean, as I said, the person himself, Orban, you just have to read what he's been doing within Hungary, let alone the fact that he's an open supporter of Putin, an apologist, a close friend, toady, a sycophant of Putin's. I mean, these are all fair, objective phrases to use. You just have to look at what has been saying about Putin from the outset of the war, let alone that, the fact that his the way that he has been controlling immigration in the country, yes, you can say absolutely he has a right to control his own borders, but he's been violating Poland's sovereignty in many ways by pushing refugees into Poland, encouraging them to get in, enabling them to get in illegally. This is all open source stuff, and it's one of the causes among several for there being a breakdown of relations between Poland and Hungary. But it's what he's doing within his own country, undermining the judiciary, undermining the independence of his judiciary, using strong arm tactics against opposing political parties, hiring thugs to break up demonstrations. I mean, all of these things. But the timing is bad too, because Hungary's on the eve of an election. I forget what date it is, but
It's in
Orban's facing
2026.
what's that?
It's in
2020.
2026.
2026.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think it's early 2026 though, right?
Mhm.
And opposition to him is growing. It's going to be a challenging election. And now, I mean, he's all over social media saying that he came to the United States and secured a deal with the United States, and which directly affects the economy of Hungary and is going to stand him in good stead with the electorate. So there's political ramifications aplenty, not just geopolitical, but domestic political ramifications that are not positive. And for those who say, so what? I mean, we should definitely, I think, this isn't a naive view. Again, going back to US stance in Europe since the Marshall Plan, we should back countries that represent democracies and democratic values, and we should oppose those countries that threaten those values. I mean, that's that to me just
100%.
seems such a yeah, it's a foundation of what we stand for, right? Since the birth of this nation, and people seem to overlook that. So overall, incomprehensible decision. It's I and I and not a good one, frankly. And as Mick pointed out, those countries against whom we are imposing sanctions and whom we are rightfully hectoring to get away from dependence on Russian oil can now point to this anomaly and say, WTF, what's going on?
Well said. And Hungary is, of course, an EU member and a NATO member. So when I had to talk about this week, I looked it up. Apparently, you can't kick a country out of either of those, but there are ways to minimize their potential negativity inside it. So in the EU, if this continues, they can essentially take all voting rights away from uh, something to be considered. Uh, Hopefully, they would just leave them. They hopefully they don't leave. Hopefully, they throw Orban out and turn back toward the west. The other thing on NATO, which we've seen, they can't necessarily kick anybody out of NATO either. But there's the one argument that I saw is under the Vienna Convention, Article 60, for people who care, there is a way to essentially remove somebody from NATO based on their um, inconsistency with the overall purpose and values of the organization, right? So if you're, for example, if you're pro Russia, you're inconsistent with the purpose of NATO, at least to defend themselves against an obviously aggression nation of Russia. So I don't know that any of that's going to happen. But I think the discussion should start in earnest if they continue down this road and Orban stays in power.
Yeah, I forget the name of the previous leader in Poland, but when he started veering towards undermining the judiciary in Poland, I don't know if you remember, but there was talk of downgrading Poland and even evicting Poland from the EU based on that. And fortunately, that didn't happen, and Poland has made
Yes,
a remarkable resurgence. And now Poland is the country that we should be rewarding of
yes,
them all. Poland a is a mainstay of NATO, has upped its GDP expenditure to above on defense to above 4%, has undertaken a massive modernization of its military, has been overt in its opposition to Russia, and actually covert too. If that who's that reprehensible human being who runs the team house? The
Jack
um,
Murphy.
yeah, if Jack and Sean Naylor's High Side, that's a great. By the way, that was a great article too. I do encourage that. Was that released on the High Side in the end, or at Substack about Poland's covert
I think
operations?
initially it was released in on
Yeah.
Jack's regular website, and then High Side later.
In any case, Poland has been doing much, both in support of Ukraine and against Russia, and to uphold everything that we have asked member nations to do in NATO. And Poland has done more than that and should be rewarded in some way by the United States rather than Hungary.
great example. Hopefully, Hungary views it as an example. The people of Hungary, that is.
Yeah, and the Hungarian elections are in April of 2026. No exact date is set yet. Just FYI for everybody.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a repetition of what happened in Georgia, right? Where the Russians are definitely backing Orban, and you're going to see a massive disinformation campaign. You already have strong arm tactics by Orban and his supportive thuggery. There's echoes of Georgia and indeed of Ukraine back in 2014 in this upcoming election.
Yeah, I saw the Georgian elections. I mean, I read that Russia spent about $100 million on like advertising. Just not
Yeah.
forget like that's overt. Like forget the covert stuff. Like they're just taking out ads in their own like Georgian super PACs basically to try and sway that election.
Yeah, same thing in Moldova. This is, and we've talked here on this show about Russia, what Russia is doing, the the active measures that are being conducted by GRU throughout Europe are increasingly active, and we, the United States, appear to be ignoring them. Mick knows more than I do about the focus of the intelligence community having been forcibly focused away from Russia in the last year or two, which I think is a great mistake.
It is. They're clearly the most dangerous adversary we have. They've proven it, right? Not only in their capacity to wage war, nuclear specifically, but their willingness to. Right? How many other countries have just invaded their neighbor in the last few years? Right? And if they're successful there, does anybody really think they'll stop? What they try to gobble up every country that's not in NATO? I mean, why
Yeah,
wouldn't you
it's a good
believe
point.
that?
When it comes to intent, and I'm not saying we should take our eyes off China, but Russia is arguably a more immediate threat to U.S. national interests because of its intent, because Putin is a wild card. At
Yeah,
least,
and you're right. We shouldn't take our eye off. There's a new book out. I just bought it. What's it called? The American Edge. Talks about um, and one this kind of argument in Washington always happens like it's either or. No, man. The defense budget's $1.1 trillion. We can do both Russia
Yeah.
and China, right? So just
Yeah.
knock off the policy won't
And
stay current.
Venezuela.
Right, in
Yeah.
Venezuela, right? We have 10. Well, I think that's that's perfect segue there.
And
Andy.
Canada doesn't even count, so let's slide Canada in that too. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, we could do both. But American Edge is about how we are. Well, we're not even doing that. I mean, a lot of people, China hawks came in, including people in this administration, talking about how we need to focus almost solely on China. Well, now we got 10% of our force in the Caribbean, right? And in part of the interview, I think Seth Jones is one of the authors, said he was just out there, and everybody told him it's like everywhere you see is a China military presence everywhere. Like it's substantially changed in the last few years, and we're sending our assets elsewhere. Not the topic for discussion this episode, but uh, I think that I haven't read it, so can't endorse it. But certainly the people that wrote it know what they're talking about, and it sounds very impressive.
Yeah. So yeah, talking about shuffling our assets around. Venezuela. I mean, we were all pretty sure that it was going to happen this week, an attack, us attacking inside of Venezuela, maybe going for Maduro himself. I thought it was going to happen later in the week, like after Election Day, but I mean, we still haven't seen anything. There have been, like I mentioned before, there have been some kinetic strikes on narco, traffickers and stuff like that, or like the smugglers, and we're just waiting and seeing. I haven't really seen any more build up in terms of like, assets into the Caribbean. I know the Gerald Ford is like steaming in now, and it should be there probably within like a month. Where are you guys at with this? What are you hearing? What's the deal?
So
Arm wrestle.
I think it was reasonable for not just us, but just about everybody to think that something was going to happen, right? They were issuing notice to airmen, blocking off airspaces, doing B-1 flybys. Um, Either that they were heading toward doing something and the president decided not to, which could have happened, or they were wanting to look like they were heading towards something, hoping that Maduro would flee the country. Right? I don't know which is true, but I don't think you could say like, "Oh, there's nothing to see here." And I mean, it was just way more action that was necessary. There's going to be more forces in this area than any time that I can remember. I think the stat is about 10% of the naval force will be there once Gerald Ford is there with its accompanying ships. It's clearly about, and this has been repeated so many times that I'll say it another time. It's clearly beyond just drug interdiction. Right? You don't need this for drug interdiction. The drug interdiction is, I think, important. Most people aren't going to stick up for drug smugglers, so there's not a lot being talked about there. But important to note that the Senate voted not to require the Trump administration get authority to do something against Venezuela, which is odd. It's kind of like it's not usually done that way. So, and I think it was 51-49. Correct my if I'm wrong. But so that the way I see it is basically authorizing the president to do something. If you're not going
Yeah.
to require him to get authorization, right? So I think you might as well just view that as the president just authorized action against Venezuela, which is beyond interdicting lethally um, drug boats. So that would be land-based attacks, which is a sovereign country, one we don't like, but or at least the government, but it's still a sovereign country. So the way I view it is they essentially authorize it. So perhaps now they're just waiting for the USS Gerald Ford to get there because that's the big club in this array of capacity that the U.S. has, and we'll just have to see what happens when it gets there.
Yeah, so a little info, Andy, before you go on the that vote in the Senate. The Senate voted on November 6th, 51-49, to reject a resolution that would have to require the Donald Trump administration to obtain congressional authorization before launching military strikes against Venezuela or in Venezuelan territory. I mean, That's
Isn't that
insane.
authorization then?
It's the
Right?
most
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's the most extraordinary vote, and I just cannot see how that is a good thing. I mean, the the strength of the process for checks and balances, I say the strength, but it's been diminished over the years. But the whole point of the system of checks and balances that we have is that Congress is supposed to provide oversight over the executive's ability to execute foreign policy, specifically to commit military force overseas, right? And so it's okay if there is a vote, for in support of military action. That's in line with the Constitution. But for the Senate to vote, hey, we don't even want to look at this one. we don't. We just want to. We
Hands
just
up.
want to sit on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's abdicating their responsibility under the Constitution, and we've seen frighteningly a lot of that. I mean, all through Afghanistan and Iraq, where there was. I mean, look, I'm a former member of the military. I'm not from, the traditional left of the source of alternate views.
You never
to
had blue
this.
hair, Andy?
My point is this: that it's healthy for Congress to provide oversight and a check on the executive's ability, power to deploy military force overseas, and we saw Congress essentially abdicate that under a continuing AUMF in the aftermath of 9/11. There was kind of an AUMF that was never challenged and went on and on and on for what I think it's still in effect, right? And
I think there's
so
an attempt to get it removed in the next NDA. You'd have to look
yeah,
that up.
but I
But you're
mean,
right.
so
It
we
just went on
flailed
forever.
around. We flailed around in Afghanistan forever. Even when, as everyone knows, the reality on the ground didn't match our lofty objectives, and no one really questioned that, right? And it just went on and on because it was unpatriotic, right, to challenge the use of American force in the aftermath of 9/11, even 2 decades after 9/11, even though we were wasting blood and treasure in a war that we could not win, and the many on the ground knew that we could not win it. So just a few years later, for us to say, or Senate to say, hey, we don't want to look at this. It doesn't matter what you think about whether or not we should go to war with Venezuela. You should probably want the U.S. political system of checks and balances to work in the way that the founding fathers intended it for it to work, right?
Yeah,
And
very good
someone's going
point.
to have to, if we do go to war, I mean, think about the aftermath of Iraq, and how that became afterwards became from a good idea to, in most people's perspective, not such a good idea, right? But in any case, had traumatic consequences, not just for Iraq, but for U.S. foreign policy in the region. And the only country that really ended up profiting from that was arguably was Iran. I know, and Iraq actually is probably not our worst mistake. I think our worst mistake was to continue in Afghanistan as we did. Iraq may, in the long term, turn out to be okay. But anyway, my point is simply this: that to step back and say, "Hey, we're not even going to look at this, so I guess you can do what you want," is just it's abdicating your responsibility.
It is abdicated, but I think you could also say they just authorized it, right?
Yeah.
And you just say, well, whether you want to own it or not, when you say that the president doesn't have to come to Congress to get authorization, you're saying he has authorization,
Or
right?
authorized it without any rigorous debate.
At
I mean,
all.
that's what
No
we should
debate.
be saying
Right.
is, what are
Yep.
the why? Where's your intelligence? What are the whys? How does this undermine U.S. national interest if we don't, do this? Why is this a compulsion to do this now? Because, I don't want to wax too lyrical about this, but people are going to die. And the people who, you may not care There may be elements of the U.S. population that don't care about foreigners dying, but it won't all be foreigners. I guarantee that.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of incredible to me, like witnessing like media and even podcasts like this are doing more of a more rigorous debate than the people who are supposed to make the decision. There's only 100 of them in the Senate, right? That's out of 340 million people. Frankly, to me, if you ask me, it's like an impeachable offense for senators to like not take the subject, the issue, and to even debate. I'm gonna be honest, like it's a fucking joke.
And honestly, we would be better off, or certainly Venezuela would, if Maduro did say it, right? He's autocrat. He's tyrannical. He's taken a country that should be one of the wealthiest countries in the Western Hemisphere, not I mean Southern Western Hemisphere, and turned it into a basket case where 7 million people had to leave because they couldn't find food, right? $14 trillion in proven oil reserves. But the question is, do we need to do it by force? I think that's definitely needs to be debated. To Andy's point, even if it's almost a flawless execution, we're going to see a lot of Americans die. This is the administration that wants to get out of foreign wars. That's why I really hope, I don't know what they're doing, but President Trump was announced it. I hope the agency can figure out a way to do this that avoids the need for military action. Whether it's convincing his pilot to go to
Yeah.
Miami or El Paso, which would be awesome, or take him out, man. I mean, we should not. We should all hope, even if you're for a regime change scenario, we should all hope that it doesn't end up with the U.S. military having to be directly involved, because we're going to lose. And we're on the precipice of Veterans Day. And to both of your points, this is if Congress isn't going to do its job, however they come out, then I think the American people are going to start wondering.
Yeah, you expect the Senate to be kind of the adults in the House, right? I mean, that's always
That's
been
what
the
they
way.
say.
And to be more bipartisan, to be a little more mature in their decision making, and to understand the constitutional foundations of their responsibilities. That's why this is concerning. And by the way, announcing that you're authorizing covert actions, a new one.
Yeah.
Take out
Probably
an
did.
ad and like,
It's like,
I'm sure
go ahead,
I'm
Mick.
sure there's a lot of covert clandestine employees that are make it more difficult.
wait a second.
But we'll still figure it out. We'll still figure it out. I'm sure. I'm sure. I don't know what they're doing, but I'm sure they'll figure it out. I hope they do. I
Yeah.
do. But to the other point on the Senate, I mean, if you're supportive of the military takeover of Venezuela, just say you are, and in the Senate, then get on the floor and make the argument. Get on
Yeah.
the floor and make the
Make an
argument.
argument.
Yeah, make an argument. And if you're not, same thing. But just to go, we're not even going to happen. So we have a potential based on the size of the force, right? This could be an actual invasion of Venezuela. I don't know if it is. I don't know if it's a bluff. But the size of the force is getting close. Now, I think they need a lot more ground forces if they're going to do that. But maybe it's a Noriega type apprehension. So we're seeing that happen, and then the Senate says you don't have to come to us for authorization. So
Yeah, what's their
this
job?
is
What do they do? The Senate.
It's
so
an
it says
ostrich
clearly
move.
in Article 1, they get to declare war, and they are in charge of raising the armies and the navies, which includes, of course, the Air Force and Marine Corps. So if I think the administration can say, okay, then that's authorization, so they could launch this as soon as Ford gets there or whenever they think they're ready. And we don't know how it'll go, right? Even with the most elite units, which I think exist in the U.S., uh, still could go bad. Still could go bad. We could see
Sure.
a lot of Americans get killed. We could see helicopters shut down. Um, and
Look at
then
Just
where are
Cause.
these? Yeah, yeah. So we should at least be having a debate, an open debate, not on podcasts, but in the Senate.
Right, where it really matters, actually matters, where decisions can be actually made. It's like a fucking joke,
And
man.
the House. Yeah.
Yeah. in Congress. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just they're just not working. It's like it's nuts to me. Even with the shutdown going on, it's like, can you guys do your jobs? Like, you're the leaders of the land. Like, take it fucking seriously. That's just me, an angry New
I'm
Yorker.
going there tomorrow. They might not let me in now.
Let them know that they're idiots. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else while we wrap up Venezuela?
To be continued. We're gonna. This is looks like it's going somewhere.
We'll obviously keep an eye on it. See what I did there? Because eyes on. Anyway, last bit was it seems like Hamas is being allowed to leave Gaza through the Rafah crossing. Which, what's going on there, Mick? Enlighten us, please.
So the issue really is from the U.S. perspective. There's a bunch of Hamas folks that are still in tunnels in the Rafah area, right? They can't get out. So I'm sure they want to get out, but the U.S. is looking at it as a test case for the disarming of Hamas. So I don't think they know actually where they'd go. It's either inside inside Gaza, or potentially to another country. But
Okay.
Israel is pushing back, not wanting him to be given amnesty, because it's basically amnesty. They come out of the tunnels, they put down their weapons, they get moved to another place, and then they're like out of bounds, right? So I understand how that would have issues for Israel, but if you believe in the ceasefire process and the 20-point plan, this is going to happen. If it can't happen with these 300, it's not going to happen with the thousands that still remain. So the U.S. has dispatched Mr. Kushner and Mr. Witkoff over there to really put pressure on Israel. So I think the U.S. is right in this. That, like, look, if this can't happen, then we're not going forward to the stabilization force coming in. We're not going to be doing reconstruction of Gaza. All the things that's really beneficial for the people of Gaza and Israel, in my opinion. So I think the U.S. is right in pushing this to happen. Again, I understand why they'd have issues with it, but unless they just want to leave the current state as is in perpetuity, which is not acceptable.
Yeah, I think the Israelis need to look at recent history, and there were all, no matter how violent the conflict and bitter the conflict, the ones that have evolved into successful peace plans have all been based on a DDR process, and that involves understanding that your enemy is no longer your enemy and integrating him into the new security force apparatus. That may be anathema to the Israelis, but it's a reality. It's a fact on the ground. You can't have a totally independent security force, unfortunately, and then have all these guys who have been brought up to understand in a culture of violence and anger and resentment, just hanging around without a job. That's not going to work. You have to understand that they're probably going to have to be integrated into whatever it is, whatever comes after the ISF, the International Security Force, or whatever the International Security Force mentors into existence, is going to involve former Hamas guys. Look what happened as Rhodesia became Zimbabwe. You think that war wasn't a violent, bitter war? You think that terrorist acts didn't occur, that white settlers weren't murdered in their farmhouses along with their kids and everything, but it evolved into, I'm not praising Mugabe or what happened afterwards, but it was a successful DDR process. Same thing in South Africa, all right? Where there was even a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But the ANC, even though they were the victors, went through a DDR process and were integrated into the security forces, along with former members of the South African security forces who happened to be white, and it worked. So again, the Israelis need to look at that and shelve. I know I'm going to get attacked for this, but shelve a lot of this animosity and bitterness, and understand that the long-term demands that they make concessions like this.
Andy, what's DDR, just for everybody?
Oh, it's disarmament. What's the second D? And reintegration, right?
Disengagement.
Look at it.
You zoom
Sorry,
in
I
so
didn't know.
much, you start forgetting where
Yeah.
Disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration.
demobilization. Yeah. Yep.
But I mean, so on the International Security Force, which by the way is still kind of a vague entity, right? It looks, I mean, Turkey's offering forces. The Israelis have nixed that because of Erdogan's pro-Hamas stance. So it looks as though security forces are going to be provided by Azerbaijan, I believe, and Indonesia. Neither of which countries has any real background or cultural understanding of the Middle East. And Indonesians may be Muslim, but that's as far as it goes. The Egyptians are going to play they're going to have to play a prominent role in training, but I'm not sure if they're going to provide forces themselves to the ISF. But my point is that, again, this gets back to the fact that you can't have, especially outsiders from the Middle East coming in and thinking that they're going to enforce peace unless you have some process for taking the sting out of the militants, the guys who've been fighting there in a Dresden-like environment for the last 2 years. They're not just going to go away quietly and become shopkeepers. Shit, I mean, we learned that in Iraq, right?
And so the U.S. is pushing for the mandate for this ISF. They were last week, so maybe this week it'll get approved, which is necessary. So it's a good thing. But then everything Andy said is going to be now you got to put it together, right? So Egypt is acceptable, I believe, to Israel. Turkey's not. They might be the core of it. And the U.S. has its coordination center out there to help organize it, not to go in. But I don't think any country, Egypt or Indonesia, is willing to go in and fight Hamas. Right? They're not willing to replace the IDF and then fight their war. So it's really going to come down to Hamas's willingness to, disarm and demobilize. Or, unfortunately, we could see this kick off again in earnest because Israel's simply not going to leave them in the sizable position that they are
That's
right now.
That's the only incentive you can offer the rank and file. The only incentive is to give them jobs. Shit, I mean, think about the sons of Iraq, right? Who do you think they were? They were guys who've been fighting us, right?
Yeah.
And we paid them $150 a month not to do that and guard checkpoints instead. And it was a great program and it worked. I mean, you've just got to get over,
right?
Yeah.
You have to be practical to win.
Wouldn't that be like a bit like counterinsurgency strategy? And like you've mentioned before, Andy, that the IDF doesn't fuck with that.
Yeah, they don't have a counterinsurgency doctrine, basically. I mean, not a doctrine. They've had various papers written about counterinsurgency, but they don't follow counterinsurgency doctrine.
Yikes. Anyway, you think Israel would really be okay with like Egypt taking a bigger role in the ISF, like the international force, like peacekeeping force, whatever?
Well, they're not 100% trustworthy. They don't 100% trust Egypt. Of course not. They're worried about the growth of the Muslim Brotherhood back in the military, even though Sisi is vehemently opposed to the Muslim Brotherhood. The Israelis will tell you that nevertheless, the Muslim Brotherhood has a firm hold within the Egyptian military. But nevertheless, they don't have a lot of choice,
right.
I think, which is what Rick was trying to say when I stepped over in there.
I wonder I guess if both sides agree, it's not an issue, but there's the treaty if they would allow Egypt to move in. I don't know. I'm sure some international legal scholar could answer that. But I guess if they're both for it, then there won't be an issue. Right? Who's going to be contesting it? But some force does. And to Andy's other point is a lot of these other countries, great for them for stepping up, but they don't have a cultural awareness of Gaza, whereas Egypt obviously would be much more culturally aware.
Yeah, Egypt owned Gaza until 1967.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, will Israel and like the hard right of the Likud, or of Netanyahu's government, be down for that? You know,
Hard
No,
right
I
isn't
mean
down for
they
any of
want the
this.
war to continue. You know, when this incident occurred last week with the two Israeli soldiers being killed, and Smoldrich is yelling, "This is war." You know, I mean, he was absolutely euphoric, ecstatic at the prospect of having a reason to go back to war.
Did any of those guys serve, by the way? Was this like a classic chicken hawk scenario where the most vehement for war have never actually been in one? I guess I should look
Yeah,
that
I
up.
don't know. I don't know. I think probably I don't know if either of them had religious exemption, but their ages are such that they wouldn't have been involved in, the invasion of Lebanon. I don't know if they're involved in the 2006 war, but actually it was only but no, I suspect that they have not.
I mean, that's even crazier. Like,
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got, I mean, the only, uh, Benny Gantz, who is a career soldier and has served in multiple conflicts, is a moderate and a voice of reason, in the Knesset, and has been throughout this. I
so,
mean, I
Very
say he's
popular
moderate,
here.
he's moderate by Israeli standards.
right. So,
He was,
Gavir, he was exempted from service due to his extreme right political background.
wow. Wow. So it literally created the chicken hawk.
So you can
What the
You can have religious exemption, you can have physical exemption, or you can just be such a political nutter that they're like, we don't want you.
unbelievable. So you can make
That's
decisions to
insane.
send the military to war, but you can't be
I
too
love
crazy
it.
to serve in
Political
it?
exemption. Wow.
That's wow, I'm gonna use that in the future, I
Yeah.
can tell you that.
I thought it would be just because he's such an overweight fat pig. But
So yeah, Smoltrich served in the IDF in a non-combat role. He served as a secretary in the operations division for the general staff.
yeah, we
Oh
sat on the
yeah.
general scheme.
Yeah, that's the privilege to get to be what the
That's
staff for
that's
the
the
general
classic. That's the
first thing.
classic thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like a senator now who was a JAG in the Air Force, uh, publicly saying this week, "Hey, we're killing all the right people." It's like the guys who've actually had to do that are less enthusiastic.
You'd also think
Yeah.
a JAG would be a little bit more reasonable and logical in their thought process too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not this particular one.
Right.
Speaking of that, not to digress, but I know I mentioned this yesterday. If you're looking for a good movie, Nuremberg. Speaking of Jags, that is, it's freaking
Oh
exceptional.
yeah, I would love to
Like
see
it's
that.
I
Yeah,
haven't been to the movie theaters in a long time, and I really was lamenting the fact that we haven't been making any good movies, or we like collectively. And I went to see that, and it should win them. It should definitely win the Oscar. Um, Russell Crowe and Rami Malek, two already won the Academy, should win it again. And
yeah,
it's not just something in history that everybody should remember. It's really relevant because it's based on a book by the psychiatrist that interviewed them, and he's played by Rami Malek in this, Dr. Kelly. And his whole point of his book was, this isn't just a unique time and space. This could happen
yeah,
again. It can happen
yeah,
again if you don't look for it, if you don't fight against it. This kind of
yeah.
depravity, tyranny is not unique to Germany in the
Very,
1930s and
very,
40s.
and that's that. I couldn't agree more, Mick. And that's why it's so concerning when you hear political leaders start to say, "Hey, rules of engagement are bullshit, and we don't want to tie the hands of our warfighters by, getting them not to, trying to persuade them not to kill civilians, et cetera, et cetera." That's exactly right. It's ignoring history.
That's right. And I mean, we could have just drug them out and shot them, right? But we actually had a trial, exposed what they did, and had a process, and that really set the standard, I think,
Yeah.
going ahead. So there's a lot of reasons to watch that, in addition to just being just exceptionally well done.
Yeah. Check it out.
You went
Also,
to the theater there in DC?
Yeah, the Draft House. Alamo
So you
Draft
can
House.
drink beer there.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh
Alamo
yeah,
Draft
yeah.
House,
That's why.
awesome
That's
spot.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's just a
that's an
plus and a
incentive.
minus. It's a plus because I like drinking beer when I watch movies. It's a minus, but it's a long movie. Guys our
Yeah,
age, we're gonna have to get up and miss a little part, so I'll have to watch it again.
yeah. It's a lot of beer.
Um,
It was good. It was really good though.
Yeah,
I
I
All
want
gotta
to see
check
serious.
it
that.
out. I gotta check it out too. What's it called? I was gonna say something. I totally forgot. Oh, to talk about what you were saying, Andy, like where we're like dehumanizing the enemy or the other, whoever is we're dehumanizing so much. It's like when I was growing up and learning history and stuff, and it's obviously biased towards us. We were always the good guys, right? Like World War II and stuff like that. And it's like more and more we're trying not to be the good guys. Like it doesn't matter what happens, we can wipe out, it's like, I don't know. America used to mean something, I think, and
Yeah,
it's fading slightly.
let, let me tell you something I always think about. In the height of the Second World War, right, and that was an existential fight for European countries. There's no doubt about that. So we're talking before Barbarossa even began. Um, no, actually, it was right as Barbarossa began, so no one knew how that would turn out. But it really, this whole thing about Britain standing alone. Britain was standing alone, at least, within Western Europe, the only country, and its cities were getting pummeled, from 1940 onwards. The mass raids on London, Coventry, Midlands cities, 30,000 civilian dead, I believe, in that 1 year alone, right, which is a huge amount. And so the British started to bomb at first very ineffective raids into German cities, beginning with Berlin and then focusing, of course, on the Ruhr and Hamburg and a lot of, and then it became a bombing campaign, which, by the way, the British Bomber Command suffered the highest casualties of the war, 55,000 killed, and only 100,000 ever served in Bomber Command. Right, and I'm talking 55,000 killed. So over 50% of those who served in Bomber Command were killed, dead. But anyway, so existential war, the Germans, Britain was still in fear of invasion, and it became a controversy, the fact that the British were bombing German cities, and it was contested in Parliament. It was contested by the Labour Party, a prominent MP who was a First World War hero, by the way. I can't remember his name, but he's like won the distinguished DSC in the First World War. But the point was, hey, this is against our values. We've become like our enemies, and we're killing civilians for the sake of killing civilians. And that was an actual parliamentary debate, and that was
During the height of World War II.
the height of the war, an
Yeah.
existential war.
France is
And
gone.
so I always think
Yeah.
about that when I hear about people going, oh, we shouldn't have our hands tied behind our back. We should be able to do this and that. It's like, you don't get it, do you? You don't get why we're fighting in the first place. And we sacrifice, and we lose that. Then we've lost everything.
I do think it's the core of America to not only be the leader of the free world, but to fight for freedom, right? And I don't mean just to be standing on a pedestal as an American, but from our inception, right? We fought to free ourselves from monarchy and tyranny. We fought a war to free all of our citizens, not just part of them. Beat Nazism, fascism in Europe. We beat Imperial Japan, which was dominating Asia in a brutal way that doesn't get near as much attention as it probably should have. We won the Cold War by leading, and we've been a force for good for a vast majority of our history. I think you can prove that empirically, not just as an American talking. I think Americans should view that proudly and should do everything they can to continue that. If we're not, I don't know who would replace us. If we're not this leader, I don't see another country replacing us, and I can't understand why any American would want to be replaced in this regard, even if there was one. Tomorrow's a Marine Corps birthday, and the day after that is Veterans Day. So, I'm waxing
Happy
philosophical
birthday,
here.
Marines.
Amen. So,
happy birthday to the Marine Corps. And happy Veterans Day to everybody. I want you guys to do me a favor. Not you guys here, but the people listening and watching. I want you to go and check out Mick's new podcast called The Pup on the Porch, Applied Stoicism. Out now on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, everywhere you can consume podcasts. The links will be in the description. Andy Milburn, incredible writer, incredible memoir, When the Tempest Gathers. That link is in the description. It's one of the 3 books I've ever read. And it's at least top 3 of those. It's really good. That link is in the description as well. Check out Andy's Substack. He's got a ton of links if you want to find Andy. And the best place you can go to help support the show is patreon.com/theteamhouse. You get both Eyes on Geopolitics and the Team House episodes ad-free and early. And if you guys want, you can ask us questions for the guys to answer. Both Mick, Andy, and Jason. I have no answers to any questions, so check it out, guys. A pleasure as always. Any final thoughts before? I don't want to cut you guys off.
I haven't been reading the comments on our YouTube recently. Are we still getting the usual? There's always a small group of hate mail, and it's the same. It's the same guys.
You're gonna have some cunts and stuff. Yeah, yeah.
This show is terrible. I hate you guys.
But I keep watching. Yeah.
I just came back because I want to confirm how much I hate you.
We'll occasionally get like, this is like a CIA. This is a CIA psyop and stuff like that. I'm like, I wish it was, because that means they were paying us.
And we would announce that we're in the CIA.
Bingo, yeah. That's step 1. Is that what they teach you first day at the farm?
Yeah, don't start by announcing your affiliation.
Lesson 1 at the farm, day 1. Guys, don't tell anybody you're in the CIA. First and foremost, first rule.
It is.
Yeah. All right, guys, a pleasure as always. Thank you.
All right, fellas.
Thanks, gents.
See you next week.
Hey, guys, how's it going? It's D. I want to thank you for watching the show. I really appreciate it. I'd love for you guys to check out our Patreon. It's at patreon.com/theteamhouse. The link is in the description. Super easy to find. If you're listening, it's in the show notes as well. You can find it right there. What do you get? You get ad-free audio, ad-free video for both Eyes on Geopolitics and the Team House podcast. So 2 podcasts ad-free for the price of 1. You also get the shows a couple days early on both video and audio. And you have the opportunity to shoot us a message, ask questions, whether it's Team House or Eyes on. We could cover topics and stuff like that. It really, really helps support the show. We really appreciate the patrons that are there now. We couldn't do it without you guys. So consider supporting the show. It's at patreon.com/theteamhouse. The link is in the description and in the show notes if you're listening to us on audio. Really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.